Welcome to Live Breathe Film, episode 99. You're here with Corey, Doug, and Murph. Thank you for joining us. Today we'll be talking about our favorite films of 2023 as we are now heading into March and have gotten caught up with basically everything that we were looking to see in 2023. There are definitely some stragglers that we haven't gotten to yet, each of us. Um, but over the next week, I think everyone will really be working on catching up with those remaining films because our next episode will be doing our big Oscar episode and what we hope to see win in each category. What we would pick, not necessarily what's going to win, although we'll likely talk about what is going to win as well, since with all the precursor award shows, it's pretty obvious what's going to win in most of the categories. Um, but for now, we will just talk about our favorite films of 2023. You're not going to see all award films on here. You're going to see a variety of films. Some definitely are consensus award show movie picks. Others are blockbusters. Actually, you know what? I think some are genre films that I think there's only two films that weren't nominated for one Oscar on here, and then two of them were like or one of them was strictly like a one of the below the line categories for films that don't typically get nominated in any major ones like screenplay, director, actor, picture. But it's a variety. Hopefully, you guys enjoy it. And if you haven't seen any of these films, maybe you'll decide to check them out after we talk about them. But we'll start with our number five pick. Each of us picked our five favorites. So Corey will go through his fifth pick, then Doug, then myself. We will do some skips at some points for ones that are higher on somebody else's list, just so they get the chance to bring it up, and it's not a complete waste of. It's not the surprise is gone by the time they get to their film, but yeah, there is some overlap as well, and yeah, that's really it. So Corey, you want to start with your number five pick?
Yeah, sure. So my number five pick, I went with Zone of Interest, Jonathan Glazer's newest film. Um, Directed Sexy Beast in the past, Under the Skin, Birth, which I I haven't seen. But this one, Murph and I actually saw during the film festival in New York. I went into this, I had no idea what this movie was about. Didn't know anything at that time. There weren't any trailers at all. I know Murph, you had an idea of what the movie was about. But
Yeah, I'd
yeah,
heard a lot of buzz about it from other film festivals prior, like since Cannes last summer.
right. Um, so this one is very much a period piece. It's World War II, Auschwitz. It follows Rudolf Haas, commandant of Auschwitz, um, and the concentration camp. And you know, going into this, if I knew what it was about, it definitely would have been. I mean, it's a very difficult subject and a difficult film to get through. But the the way that Glazer wrote and directed this was very clever because he, didn't shy away from the horrors that, you know, and the murders that happened in Auschwitz. Um, but he told it from a different point of view. And even creatively, it was very unique because it followed the family of Haas and just how I mean, ultimately, really how evil these people were because they were basically ignoring what was going on, on the other side of their yard on a daily basis, and living their typical, family daily life on this camp. So the movie was very powerful. The performances were incredible. Sandra Hüller, who was in Anatomy of the Fall, which is also up for a lot of awards this season, and Christian Friedel are the two big ones that really they were just fantastic. So this one stuck with me, and I was going back and forth with what I wanted to put in my top five, and this is one that definitely just squeaked in. Also, visually, like unbelievably unique with how it was edited, and just the way Glazer used visuals and audio to make you feel uncomfortable and to make you feel tense about what is going on beyond the wall without seeing it.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, Corey, about the visuals because I think everyone's really focused on the sound of the film because the sound really is the most effective aspect of it because there's no violence in the film at all that you actually see. There's spoken threats of violence and discussion about the horrors that the Nazis are doing to the Jewish populace and anyone else in the concentration camps, particularly Auschwitz, since the Hosses lived right over the walls of it. Um, but visually, it's got some crazy stuff to it as well, like the what was it, night vision or infrared scenes that they had
Yeah.
in the film. I'm not sure which it was. I guess it was night vision.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that was pretty interesting. I mean, just the way that this movie starts, like with the overture, like it's just like pitch black, and you're waiting like minutes for the movie to actually like begin and something to come onto the screen, other than pitch black and just like the score rising, the haunting score. Um, but yeah, like you said, it is anchored by two fantastic performances, even if they are two disgusting human beings. Each disgusting in their own way. Um, but it's a very different type of Holocaust film. Like, I mean, I would say Schindler's List is like the Holocaust film, like that we're all like most familiar with. But that one, that's a tough watch, and the fact that you see so much of the horrors that took place in the concentration camps, but at the same time, Schindler's List gave you the relief of a protagonist who you can actually root for, and there is some semblance of happiness in the ending, um, even if it's like a very bittersweet, like sad ending at the same time. Like you do have a hero in the film. Well, the zone of interest, you don't have that. You're just dealing with evil people, um, just living their day to day lives. Is nothing horrific is going on right over the walls from where they live. So yeah, no, it's a very unique film. Nothing like I've seen before, as far as the Holocaust goes, and just I'd say I don't know a lot of films in general. Never does sound really make such like such an impact and is really the star of a film. So when people talk about like it being like a two-way race between Oppenheimer and Zone of Interest, which we'll get to more next week at the Oscars, like I think it's there's while sound was incredibly important in Oppenheimer as well and used efficiently, especially with like the Trinity test and the rally that takes place after Hiroshima is bombed, or I believe Hiroshima was the one that they are celebrating being bombed in Oppenheimer, right?
Mhm.
Um,
I think so. I think Hiroshima got bombed first, and then
yeah,
Nagasaki.
then that's the one that they're
Yeah.
celebrating. Like those are two like huge scenes where um, sounds important, but the zone of interest, like it's sound the entire way. Yeah, wasn't expecting to see this on your list, Corey, but I mean it was super high on my rankings as well for the year. Happy to see all the nominations it's gotten and recognition it's gotten, because it's not like the easiest film for people to sit through. But I think it's also like an essential film for a lot of people to see through, like especially with what's going on in the world now.
Yeah, and out of the movies on my list, this is the one that I saw, the longest ago.
Mhm.
When we see this October, September of
Yeah,
last
back in
year.
October.
So yeah, I mean, it definitely stuck with me. And it's one I will watch again, probably pretty soon, just to see how I feel about it again.
Mhm.
Yeah, fantastic movie.
Yeah. All right. Doug, let's get into your number five film, which also was a surprise to see. This one's a completely different type of film than The Zone of Interest. Um, get into it.
Yeah, so I chose for my number five Saltburn. Um,
Yeah, pervert.
This was very surprising for me. I mean,
yeah, I mean it's definitely got it's a hard movie to recommend to anybody because of there's a lot of weird over the top stuff that
Yeah.
probably didn't need to be in the movie. Although I guess it seemed to have contributed to it finding life on streaming because people
Oh
were
yeah.
like, "You need to see how like fucked up this movie is."
Yeah,
oh
like
Uh,
people filming reaction videos of like their like parents or grandparents watching certain scenes. Um, like it's got a massive following once it hit streaming.
yeah, this movie. I don't know. I just like not necessarily like a fan of the gross out stuff. Like I could have probably done without that, but the I just like dug the movie. I would say despite it because of everything else kind of just clicked for me. I would say the acting was really great. You had Barry Keoghan, Jacob Elordi, Rosamund Pike, Carey Mulligan.
What is Carey Mulligan's name in the movie again?
oh my god. Um,
Like
It's
dear poor or
Poor Dear Pamela or
Poor Dear.
something.
yeah, something like that.
That's one of my favorite aspects of the film. That's what she's credited as.
Yeah, Poor Dear
Yeah, poor
Pamela.
dear Pamela. Yeah.
Um, but to me, like the script was, you know, dark, but also kind of a lot of like funny moments in it, which I really like dark comedies. So that had that going for it for me. The cinematography and the way that this movie was shot, like I thought every scene was, for the most part, was just awesome looking. Like I really just dug that cinematic style.
Yeah.
It was
And like,
beautiful.
yeah, the party, like when they have the party and everyone's like in masks, at the Saltburn Manor or whatever it's called. Um, just kind of had like an otherworldly like vibe to it. That was really cool. And so like I just had like a good time watching this movie, despite some of the gross out
despite
moments.
and
And
despite it not necessarily being a good time.
yeah, but there
It's
are
it's a
like,
dark movie, but it is a fun movie at the same time.
yeah, it's hard to describe. And like I said, it's really hard to recommend to people. Like I don't think I've really recommended this movie to anyone, just because of the those scenes that I think
I
won't
think
really work for everybody.
I think it's also a movie again that you just have to just jump in and watch it. Like even the trailer like does nothing for what you're about to see. It
No, not at
really
all.
it's definitely like a bait and switch. So I think you just jump in.
Yeah, no, it's got definitely has a ton of shock value to it. Like it was one of the rare movies where like I'm kind of like cringing in my seat at certain like scenes and like kind of thinking like God, like how why'd I recommend like other people come see this movie with me? um, like what's going on through their head at this point in time? Um, but yeah, no, it's got killer performances. Rosamund Pike was fantastic. Barry Keoghan, Jacob Elordi, like you said, Richard E. Grant.
I th-
And yeah, I mean, like the movie's like a vibe. Like it very much brings you back to the mid 2000s, and like she already Emerald Fennell, the writer director, already had like kind of built her own aesthetic and like visual aesthetic with Promising Young Woman. I think she really like kind of elevated that, and took it to the next level with Saltburn. Um, with it not just being like a candy colored type of movie, but like a visually like stunning one in the cinematography, like the big
Yeah.
panorama shots like of Saltburn and everything, and then like the parties and shit like you were talking about before.
Yeah, and the music. Yeah, the vibe. That's kind of just it. Like the vibe. I really like just dug the vibe that the movie had. I think if you took out some of the gross out stuff, maybe, and it doesn't come out in a year that's as strong as 2023. You know, maybe it gets nominated.
Yeah, I was surprised it didn't get any nominations. I think if nominations were a little bit later, like after it built up that huge following on streaming, maybe it would have gotten some. I mean, it's got nominations at other award shows, but
Yeah.
yeah, it was a little surprising to see because it's definitely got a massive fan base already, especially among young people. Have you seen The Talented Mr. Ripley yet?
No.
I haven't seen it.
Go back and watch that film now because it's very much like the millennial Gen Z version of that film. Came out in '99. It's with Matt Damon, Jude Law, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Gwyneth Paltrow, Kate Blanchett. Um, a lot of
Yeah, I know
similar,
this
lot
story, and I can see where the story is a little bit similar.
yeah, like a big major critique of the film was like it's how similar it was to it. I'd be interested to see what your thoughts are both on seeing Talented Mr. Ripley after seeing Saltburn, and then like what you think of Talented Mr. Ripley, and then if it changes your perspective on Saltburn at all.
Is it going to be like Joker and Taxi Driver? Like because I saw,
Yeah,
like
kind of a
like
little
had I
bit.
seen it beforehand, maybe I would be a little bit more like bitter about it being too close.
A
Yeah,
little
I've never
bit.
seen it.
Yeah, yeah, probably.
Okay.
But it's a completely different type of setting. Like Taxi Driver and Joker are both like in the city, um, and both set in like a similar time frame. While Talented Mr. Ripley and Saltburn are completely different eras. Like Talented Mr. Ripley came out in '99, and yet it's a period piece set in I don't know the '50s, I think. I'm not quite sure. I'd have to fact check that. Um, yeah, '58. Um, and also takes place overseas, but very not. I guess they are similar ages as the Saltburn characters. It just I don't think of Matt Damon and Gwyneth Paltrow and Jude Law as like young people anymore. But if it was 25 years ago, like they were probably similar ages to the actors in Saltburn. They just seem older. And then I think part of it has to do with it being taking place in the '50s and them not being as debaucherous, like the same type of debaucherous
Yeah.
um, characters that they are and that you see in Saltburn. But yeah, I'd say sometime this year, check that out. And I
Okay.
think it's definitely on streaming. Um, yeah. Anything else you want to say about Saltburn? Or
No, no, I just like I said, it's a movie that stuck with me throughout. Like when I think of all the movies I saw, it kind of stands out to me. So I feel like it had to be on the list when I was thinking my top five.
yeah, no, that's fair. Um, all right. Number five for me. In a year full of like fucking great films. Like I can't argue with any of the films nominated for Best Picture. I think it's like one of the best years in film. I still felt like I needed to include some sort of a popcorn film on there that was really like fantastic in my opinion, and a different type of movie that you go to the movies for to see, like a spectacle. Um, So like I was between like John Wick Chapter 4, and some other ones. But what I ultimately went with was Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, or Dead Reckoning Part One, depending on what poster you see or whatever, because it's since been retitled. The Part One has since been retitled, and Mission Impossible 8 will be titled something different. It won't be Dead Reckoning Part 2 like it was originally planned, even though it's a clearly going to be a two-part movie, with one continuous story. Um, but yeah, this was one that I was excited for from the beginning of the year, and it didn't let me down. Saw a test screening of it, um, and then saw it twice in IMAX when it officially came out in the summer. So got a couple different ways of seeing the film, and I guess really did see it the right way, by seeing it in an IMAX theater, because it really doesn't get better than that for the scope of the film. Um, I mean, this is a movie where it has like awesome action set piece after awesome action set piece, whether it's the airport scene where the CIA agents are following Tom Cruise and various items are getting passed off from person to person. Um, whether it's the scene in Italy, the car chase scene, which was fucking epic. Um, the biggest scene of the movie, the big train scene with the parachute jump, and then the train falling off the Orient Express falling off the bridge, similar to Uncharted 2 with the video game. Definitely an inspiration. They have not shied away from the fact, Christopher McQuarrie, that they've been inspired by Uncharted multiple times in the series already, when it comes to some of their big set pieces. But yeah, I just thought the film was entertaining and thrilling from start to finish. I thought Haley Atwell was a tremendous addition to the cast. It had um, great chemistry with Tom Cruise. It's a series that just continues to, despite it being nearly 30 years old, perhaps continued to get better each installment. Um, Not 100% sure. There's so many that are like very close to one another, but yeah, I know it didn't do great at the box office or anything like that, but didn't light fireworks in the somehow opening in the shadow of Barbenheimer. It wasn't even out yet, but yet it was already in the shadow of it. Um, it was something that I deeply enjoyed. So that's why it made my list. Were there better films of the year? Yes, but it was one of my favorite films of the year.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I didn't love it quite as much as you did, Murph. Where I would put it on my top five. I didn't see it in IMAX, so that probably didn't help. Saw it at home. Um,
I imagine
but I
it
did think,
plays an impact.
yeah, and
Not
but
quite
I
as bad as watching on like an airplane or on your phone, but
yeah, no, I
at least
watched it
watching it at
on.
4K on a nice TV is solid. But yeah, that's not anything like in seeing it in a movie theater, let alone in IMAX.
Yeah, but I thought Haley Atwell was. I completely agree. Like she had a ton of great chemistry, and I really thought like she brought a lot of like fun and levity to
Yes,
the movie, which is what I really latched onto and what I liked that they felt like they leaned into more in this movie than some
agreed.
of the other movies. And that car chase scene is probably one of the better action scenes I've seen.
Yeah,
It's just
like
like it's just like nonstop fun.
mhm. Yeah, like in the past, I thought like Rebecca Ferguson was a great addition to the franchise and brought and continues to bring a lot to it. But the character like that Haley Atwell plays, Grace, is completely different from Ilsa Foss, and they both have incredible chemistry with Tom Cruise, but it's completely different type of chemistry. And that comedic one that he brought, where like Ethan's like a lot more fun, like when he's
Yeah.
doing stuff with Grace, was huge. And then another set piece that I didn't mention was like the big like the sword fight scene with Gabriel and Elsa, and while Ethan's having his fight with Pom Clementief's character, and they're racing around. Um, and yeah, I mean, the movie is like 2 hours and 45 minutes or whatever. And all it really is a movie where things are just getting passed along and people are just trying to get control of a key, with finally the end of like two pieces of it, with finally at the end, like the ending being that like somebody has both of those pieces. Now the next movie
Yep.
will deal with the ramifications, um, of it and what the next steps are. But so it's very much half a movie, yet it still felt like complete somewhat to a degree, which is it's kind of interesting. Like it didn't feel like Dune, where like it was like a part one that just sort of ended like on a random like scene. Like this
Yeah,
felt like it had an ending, even though it was a part one.
it didn't really
Um,
end on like a cliffhanger per se. It had
exactly.
like it
Like
had a it had an ending.
it felt more like a complete movie, even though it very much is not a complete story.
Mhm.
Um, which many part ones don't pull that off. Like it chapter one was one that did. Um, I would say Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows part one is one that didn't. Um, same with probably Hunger Games Mockingjay
Mhm.
part one,
Yeah.
and Dune seems to be more of a book thing
Inf-
than anything else.
Infinity War, I would say, was a complete movie.
Infinity War is a complete movie, 100%. Back to the Future Part Two feels like a complete movie, um, even though it ends on a cliffhanger. Um,
Yep.
while Matrix Reloaded, I don't know necessarily. Um, and then Lord of the Rings vary from movie to movie. But yeah, kind of going off on a tangent, but yeah, I think we all enjoyed the movie.
Yeah.
But I mean, you guys know I love this franchise. I've been in like a basically a day one guy since I was like 9 years old, seeing this series opening weekend. Um, so I'm hyped for what seems like now will be the finale in 2025, and see how this story concludes. Whether it's the end of just the Reckoning storyline or just the Mission Impossible, Ethan Hunt franchise. Um, all right, let's move on to Corey's number four pick.
So this is another one that is definitely on like Oscar lists. I think for this really for this year, a lot of them. Anatomy of a Fall. Also with Sandra Hüller is stars in this one. Um, from French director Justine Triet. Uh, Sandra Hüller's character, her husband uh, dies of a an accident. He falls, anatomy of a fall, and the way things kind of unfolded, it seems like she could have been part of it. So uh, it very much is like a courtroom and and investigative type of movie. But the story and the performances, especially from Sandra Hüller, were fantastic. Completely different character than she played in the Zone of Interest, um, but
Just
still, like,
powerhouse performance, fucking speaking, going through English, French, German, like
yeah,
doing whatever she needed to do. Obviously, she's fluent in those languages, so that I don't know if it's necessarily difficult, but impressive nonetheless.
yeah, no, she like her and the actor who played her son. Her character has I guess he's like a 10-year-old son who is legally blind. Uh, he put on such a fantastic performance, and the two of them really carried this movie. Um, every other actor in the film was fantastic too, but they really carried the film throughout. And just the whole story was very it held you, and kept your attention the entire film. Uh, definitely aspects of the courtroom which were frustrating, which I think was done on purpose. Uh, you know,
And the French legal system's a fucking joke.
that and
Yeah, it was shocking.
that and one thing I noticed, because I did watch this a second time relatively recently, and it seems like it was purposeful in a lot of ways to try to keep you behind uh, Sandra's character, and try to get frustrated with what was going on with the legal system. But you were still confused about where the truth lies, and I still believe that carries throughout through the end of the movie. But very good. Highly recommend it. It's on streaming already, I believe. It was just, if you like crime movies, it's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, it's the most like elevated, prestigious like episode of Law and Order ever.
100%. Yeah.
Least that I've ever seen. But yeah, man, you went heavy on the international films this year with your 5 and 4 picks. Unfortunately, we won't get to see them go up against one another in the best international film category next week at the Oscars because the French committee decided not to submit Anatomy of a Fall as their submission. Major fail on their part, and the film that they did submit didn't even get nominated. But now the Zone of Interest likely has a very easy win. But yeah, I mean, the film's nominated for so many major awards: Best Director, Best Picture, Best Original Screenplay, Best Actress. It's got a lot of big award nominations at the Oscars, similar to the Zone of Interest, which I'll put that one also as the Best International nomination as well. This was a very close one to make it onto my list. I just ultimately like the number 5 pick was the one that I was like struggling with the most, and that's when I decided I was like, I'll go with a popcorn film rather than another prestige pick. But no, I was blown away by Anatomy of a Fall when I saw it, and I love the debates that could be had about whether she was involved in his death or wasn't, and getting people's perspective and seeing how people think after seeing the entire film.
Yeah. I didn't love it, this movie, quite as much as you guys did. Yeah, I was more just kind of blown away by the French legal system more than anything else. I just like.
I mean, you are our resident lawyer.
The resident Lutheran lawyer.
It was just like, it just seemed like nothing mattered. You just like make up a story and just say it.
Yeah.
And, like it didn't. It was
Like
like
nonsense.
whoever made up like the most compelling story and was a better storyteller. Like it didn't matter what the facts were, and I was like, this is insane.
If you throw a fucking charismatic prosecutor on the stand or a charismatic like defense like attorney, whoever is more charismatic will likely win. It really comes down to storytelling, like you were saying.
Yeah, it was just like
wild.
Yeah, there was like no evidence to point to something, and they were just like, "This is what happened," and let me explain to you how. It was just like wild.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, all the performances were good, and it was definitely a solid movie. But like, I just couldn't get over that legal system, and that probably distracted me a bit on the courtroom stuff.
That makes sense. You're used to the American legal system, judicial system, which, while not perfect at all, shows you how much better we have it here than like first world countries overseas. Like, it's not like it's a fucking third world country or something. Like, this is France. So it really is crazy.
Yeah, it definitely made me not want to
travel internationally.
Or just, be put on trial in France because...
Yeah,
it didn't seem like you needed much.
No. All right. What do we got next? I think we're going to skip your number 4 pick because it's way higher on someone else's, Doug. So we'll get to Um, my next pick, my number 4 pick, which was American Fiction. I was like kind of neck and neck with what to do for my third and fourth pick. Um, we could talk about. We'll get to my third pick later on, but it kind of came down to the ending of this film with why this one was number 4 and my other one was number 3. Um, this one wasn't. This has what I would say is definitely like a divisive ending and something either you like appreciate or you don't. Like sometimes, like you may have to sit on it a little bit before you really appreciate it, but yeah, ultimately I preferred the tidiness of the ending of my number 3 pick. But American Fiction, um, very much a satire comedy of race in America and how um, blacks are exploited in the media, and how most of the stories that are told about them are about like their suffering, whether it's slavery, like if you're going into the past, or people like living in the hood today are dealing with like drug crisis, like the drug crisis in urban cities, and um, deadbeat dads, crack addicts. Now I'm just quoting things from the trailer that Jeffrey Wright says. Um, but yeah, what like while doing that, and it's telling like a very like human story that like really all families can relate to. It's really just a story about a family, um, and like the everyday normal bullshit that black families go through, that white families go through. Whether it's fighting with your siblings or dealing with a parent that has that is starting to deal with um, mental illness, um, issues with um, other family members who have passed away and how you're dealing with that after the fact. Um, but at the same time that it's telling this very human story, universal story, it's also very much skewering um, the entertainment industry and white people for what we enjoy when it comes to mass media about black people. It deals with Jeffrey Wright's character writing the most ridiculous fake book um, that with that he writes under a pseudonym, and it's turns into this sensation, despite the fact that it is the exact type of book that he absolutely despises because he is an author who writes um, important works that don't sell, but then he writes this piece of crap and it's a fucking phenomenon, and the movie just gets more ridiculous as it goes along. So it's kind of got these two layers to it. Um, in the story it's telling. One that's just ridiculous and heightened, and another, but that is like you can see is still somewhat like based in like reality of how like the entertainment industry works, and then another that's just about a family. And it just got some killer performances. Sterling K. Brown, Oscar nominated, along with Jeffrey Wright, Tracy Ellis Ross, um, John Ortiz, Adam Brody. So it's got an eclectic cast. Who was Erica Alexander, Erica Rose Alexander was someone who I'd never seen before. She was very solid in the film. Issa Rae has a smaller role, but does strong work with what she gets to do, um, as kind of like the catalyst for Monk, the character that Jeffrey Wright plays, his initial ire about the entire like genre of black literature that is really just about like stereotypes and their suffering. Um, but it's fucking hilarious. Cord Jefferson wrote it and directed it. This was his directorial debut. He worked on the Watchmen TV show as a writer, and I'm looking forward to see what he does moving forward.
Yeah.
Doug, you're the only other one who has seen this one so far. Corey, I know plans to
Yeah.
watch it before next week's Oscar episode.
Yeah, I thought it was a fun movie. I thought it had like I mean, yes, it's talking about something that's, not necessarily a funny topic, which is, all the things that you raised regarding, you know, being black in America and, white, um, I guess white perception of being black in America. But it's wrapped in such a great script that's
Yeah.
just hilarious. Lots of funny moments throughout it, and I completely agree. The performances were great. I mean, Jeffrey Wright, I thought
Killed it.
crushed it. Yeah,
Yeah.
one of the best performances I've seen by him.
And it's such an
Um,
understated type of role. So to make it make such a big impression is super impressive. And yeah, I definitely agree. One of his best roles. I continue. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it was a good movie, and like you said, the ending wasn't traditional. I happen to like the ending, but I could see how it was. I could see how someone could watch it and feel like it wasn't a real conclusion
Mm-hmm.
to the
Yeah.
story. So I could definitely see how that ending could be. People could either love it or hate it. It's a very unique ending. I don't know if that's how the book ended.
Yeah,
I
I'm
think
not
this
sure
is based
either.
on a book, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I think for the most part, it adapted fairly faithfully to the book, from what I've heard. But I'm not sure if
yeah,
the ending was exactly the same.
but it was definitely a great movie. Probably would make my top 10, but um, it just didn't hit like some of the other movies did for me on my top 5.
Yeah, can't argue with
But
that. I mean, strong year of film,
yeah, but it was definitely a
unusually
really
strong.
strong movie, and there's nothing I could say that there's nothing I would critique about it. But I could see how the ending wouldn't work for everybody.
Yeah. All right. Well, it'll be interesting to hear Corey's thoughts next week, and if he ends up picking it for any potential um, wins for the Oscars. Since we'll definitely be talking about it more next week. But all right, let's move on then to our next pick, which is a film that was on all of our lists. We're skipping Corey's number 3 for now, and we're going to go to Doug's number 3. It is the only movie that is on all of our lists, so it felt appropriate to talk about it right in the middle. Doug,
Yeah,
take
so
it away.
surprise, surprise, the Christopher Nolan fanboys all have Oppenheimer on their list. Yeah, my number 3 is Oppenheimer. I think you both had it one higher at number 2.
Yeah, we both have it higher.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which I don't
both
know
at
if I
number.
was supposed to say that.
It's
but
fine. We
spoiler.
both have it at number 2.
I mean, this is definitely one of Christopher Nolan's best movies. I know we always talk about how it's kind of funny that this is the movie that pushed Mission Impossible out of IMAX, and 90% of the movie is Cillian Murphy's face on the IMAX screen, just seeing those blue eyes. But yeah, just a phenomenal cast, which I think the two probably main performances for like award wise is probably Cillian Murphy and Robert Downey Jr. I guess I would say.
Yeah, definitely.
Um,
Emily Blunt is nominated, but she's not
she's
winning
nominated, but it doesn't
awards.
seem like she's probably gonna win anything.
Yeah, like Robert Downey Jr. has been constantly winning, and Cillian Murphy has been winning a
The
lot.
favorite, right? He's considered to be the favorite.
Yeah,
I mean, unless
between
you have
him and Paul Giamatti, but
Giamatti.
it's really just the two of them that have been winning awards.
But yeah, this movie just it kind of just it did everything really really well. So I describe it. Like I thought the score was fantastic. The cinematography was great. It was a solid script. I mentioned the acting by a ensemble cast. It was really great. It was just like it was just an all around like knocked everything out of the park in every aspect of the movie, which I thought was really good. Um, the when we got, I think you said it, Murph, and I think it's pretty true. You kind of see like all of Christopher Nolan's movies, or a good amount of Christopher Nolan's movies in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's something he kind of like worked his way up to. When one of the one things that really stick out to me is like the black and white at the end of the movie, where we're going to a different time period, which kind of is a callback to Memento, and then the
Yeah,
out of order
exactly.
storytelling is just kind of
Going between color and black and white like Memento did throughout.
yeah. Which so this was just kind of a this was just a movie that was really well done. It's interesting that you don't actually see the bomb. I mean, you see them test the bomb, but you never actually see the bomb drop on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It's I think Christopher Nolan said the reason he did it that way is because he wanted it to be more from Oppenheimer's point of view.
Yeah, it's his POV throughout like the film. Like the script was written like in the first person, like for him.
And I thought that was kind of a powerful choice. He kind of finds out about it like on TV, like everybody else, but
Yeah,
you're like, this guy is like
I fucking created
responsible
it, and
for all
yeah,
this, and then you're like
yeah,
hearing about it on the news. Just seems like such a crazy way to find out that something you've been working on for the last few years has been used. And like White House or nobody called to give him a heads up.
mhm.
But yeah, this was just it's a great movie. There were two others that just kind of hit a little bit better for me, but I mean, I wouldn't blame anyone for having this as number 2 or number 1 on their list, because it's definitely one of the best movies
Yeah.
of
I
the
mean,
year.
like you said, we're all Nolan fanboys. I mean, we did our list of our favorite. We ran through each of our Nolan's films this year, and each had our individual top 12s. I think Doug, you and I both had Oppenheimer at number 4, and Corey had Oppenheimer at number 2. So it was among his filmography. So it was no surprise that it made all of our lists, because plenty of the movies below 4 all would have made lists, and a bunch of them would have made lists in the past for each of us for top fives. Um, but yeah, I mean, you touched on the cast. I mean, it must be one of the, if not like the greatest cast ever assembled, like in a film. Just the sheer amount of talent on screen, like no matter how small the role was, it was like a powerhouse actor.
Mhm.
Whether it's like Kenneth Branagh or Rami Malek, Casey Affleck, um, you got Jason Clark, then you got, I mean, all the names above the credits like Florence Pugh, Emily Blunt, Robert Downey Jr., Cillian Murphy, Matt Damon. Um, I feel like I'm probably missing tons of people, and then him
Gary
bringing back
Oldman
Benny
was
Safdie.
Gary Oldman, Benny Safdie was like this was a year of him like kind of being a revelation as an actor.
Mhm.
2023. Um, but yeah, Josh Hartnett like kind of coming back into play. He's like bringing back these older actors that people kind of forget about or forgot about, and giving them stuff to do. Alden Ehrenreich gave, in my opinion, one of the best performances in the entire film, with him going up against Robert Downey Jr.'s Louis Strauss. Like they kind of did the majority of their work together, and I thought they like played an amazing tennis match. I feel like we're probably missing plenty of other people, just because of how stacked this cast was. Tony Goldwyn, like it goes on and on. Uh, like fucking Josh Peck is the one who fucking does the Trinity presses the Trinity test um, button that could have destroyed the entire world. Um, it's just like it's crazy the amount of people that were in it. But yeah, it really kind of brought together all of the things Nolan's done in the past and kind of put it into a I don't know pretty perfect package, which is why it's like seemingly going to sweep the Academy Awards or like have a semi sweep at least among all the big categories. It should be winning everything. Um, and like yeah, it's my fourth favorite of all his films. But and yes, like it's kind of like getting frustrating at this point to a degree that like it's becoming very noticeable like how Nolan does the same things over and over like with all right, you know it's going to be dealing with time and it's not it's going to be a non-linear structure and all these other things. It's going to have some cheesy dialogue, but it still like as a complete package it's just he does it so fucking well that like you have to respect it and like it's still like he's just a master of his craft. It's he, every time like when the credits roll it's like fuck man I just want to watch this movie all over again.
Mhm.
The score by Ludwig Göransson was incredible. Cinematography is incredible. um, I mean, it can go on and on with what works about the film. The editing is a major factor of the film being as good as it is. Um, but yeah, Corey, you got anything you want to add to Oppenheimer?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I wanted to add, and I felt this way even like when we saw it initially, where the movie was very long. We all knew that, but it was paced very well, and on top of it, it felt very much like a documentary or a an event that you were watching on like let's like some the History Channel. Like it had that vibe to it, and it it still felt very enthralling, and it kept you in the story, and it had all of like the Christopher Nolan touches that he usually has in his movies, but for the subject matter and for how long it was, uh wasn't really a lot of action. It wasn't traditional Christopher Nolan
No,
action movie.
not remotely an
Not at
action
all.
movie.
And it
A
still kept.
three hour movie where people are talking about
Yeah,
fucking physics.
yeah, exactly. And it kept your attention, and it was incredibly interesting, and they broke down the process of how these brilliant people in our history created such horrifying tool. And it just, I mean, and he gave every actor that we spoke about for 2 minutes, like just like throwing out this laundry list of actors that was in the movie. He gave every single one of those actors a, even if it was like a 2 minute part, it was important. And I think that is that in itself, I think is like an award that he winning type of ensemble and film. So
Yeah, well, we didn't have it as number one collectively, or none of us
mhm.
individually.
No.
I think this, like, while I think in like 20 years, this is going to be the movie that, like, he's kind of defined by. Like, since 2008, it's been The Dark Knight. And I think it's eventually going to turn into Oppenheimer as that movie for him.
Mm-hmm.
Whether
Yeah, I think you're right.
Whether Dark Knight is your favorite or not, that's irrelevant. We all had different rankings on ours in the summer, but I still think that's the movie that people think of when they think of Christopher Nolan. I think it seems like down the line it's going to be Oppenheimer.
Yeah, I think so.
But who knows what he's
Yeah.
got coming up? I mean, this he could have something even better up his sleeve that is a cultural phenomenon, and everyone is obsessed with. I mean, he's still young. He's still putting out bangers left and right. So
Yeah, but I think you're right. More likely than not, this is going to be his like career-defining movie.
yeah,
This is the one where he's probably going to win the Oscar, and
yeah, exactly.
this is going to be the one
It's
that.
important subject matter. Like, um, it's not just a comic book adaptation.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. Well, we all have Oppenheimer on our list. Anything else we want to add about Oppenheimer? Or are we good?
No.
Good.
Oh, all right. We're gonna skip my number 3 because it is higher, well higher on someone else's list. So we're also gonna skip Corey's number 3 because it is significantly higher on somebody else's list. So we're right back to you, Doug, with your number 2 film.
Nice. Skip. Back to me.
Yep.
Um, so my number 2 is definitely going to be unconventional number 2, and actually was my number 1 up until like a couple weeks ago, a week or two ago. But this movie that I'm picking is Talk to Me, which is kind of an outlier, one of the probably the biggest outliers on this list outside of Mission Impossible, I guess. It's probably those two are the ones that stick out the most. In that
Yeah.
it's not an awards movie.
Surprisingly enough, Mission Impossible was the one that got Academy Award nominations. Talk to Me and
That's
Saltburn and Talk to Me are the two that didn't. But like I said, Mission Impossible, it's like they're not like major awards that was nominated for. It's like visual effects and I forget what the other one was.
Yeah. Talk to Me I watched in the worst. It was the worst way to have watched any of the movies on my list, or even like Mission Impossible and all that, in that I watched it on a plane. Flying back from Japan.
And it wasn't edited at all.
No.
Brutal movie
I would
to watch on a plane.
Yeah, the way it was like, because it was an international flight and everything, it was like I was the only one that could see the screen.
Perfect.
So that was nice. But what I really dug about Talk to Me, so first off, like I didn't realize this until after I watched the movie, or I probably did and forgot, but like you got these like two guys that made the movie are like YouTubers, first time directors, Australian guys, and they make this horror movie, and it's just the way what I really liked about it was like a familiar concept, but it was a unique twist on it, which I thought was really well done. And like the fact that like I don't know how much I don't really want to like give a lot of way about it, and I've probably given this away in other times I've talked about this movie, but the way they deal with something that's really would be typically like scary or horrific and make it fun at times, I thought was a really unique take. The way that the movie or the actors, I hadn't heard of any of them. It's like all Australian people.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought they all did a really good job, especially the lead actress, whose name is Sophie Wilde. I thought she did an awesome job.
Yeah, I mean the only actor that was recognizable was her mom from Lord of the Rings, Miranda Otto.
Yeah, the one that's like, I'm not a man.
Yeah.
That's her line.
Which
Such a corny scene.
Which made many people annoyed back in 2003.
Yeah. But anyway, getting back to the movie, I thought the movie, like the story was really interesting and unique. The way they dealt with like, because possession is kind of a big part of it, and like being possessed by like different types of spirits, and like the way that they handled like the shot of the camera and like what happens to your eyes, and just like that whole feeling of like possession, I thought was a really great way to show it, where you kind of like felt it and saw it happening, and it kind of had like an iconicness to it. Like it kind of had its own stamp on, what this would feel like in their world. Um, and this is a movie that just, there was a really graphic scene that actually like really got me more so than anything in Saltburn, where I was just kind of like hands around my head, like I can't believe this is happening. Um, so and then just like after the movie ended, I thought the ending was, I really liked the way they ended it. Um, and it was just a movie that kind of just stuck with me, where I've thought about it multiple
Love those.
times
I love
after.
those types of movies.
Yeah, where it's just kind of stuck with me, in a way that not a lot of the movies I've seen this year have. So this movie, that's primarily the reason I've got it so high up. And the fact that it's interesting, I know they've been talking about making a sequel to the movie, just because of like that world just seems like something they can build upon, because because of the way that they made it, like have like such a cult iconic feel to it. So I don't know. They did a really great job. Horror's not typically a genre that I find myself
Yeah, you don't
drawn to.
gravitate to it like Corey and I do.
Yeah, but this was one that for whatever reason, it was my type of horror, and I really dug it.
Yeah, I was fully expecting to see this one on Corey's list. Shocked when it wasn't. Um, but yeah, I mean, we've talked about in the past. Like, I had zero interest in seeing this one based on the trailer, and was very satisfied with it when I did see it. Thought it was um, one of the better horror movies of the year. Um, like a solid four-star flick. Looking forward to seeing them continue this universe. It had the disturbing A24 horror types of scenes that are brutal and you want to look away, which most horror movies don't necessarily have. Deals with typical things in A24 elevated horror movies like trauma. Um, but, and I guess, yeah, no, it deals with it pretty overtly. Um,
Yeah, I'd say
but
so.
yeah,
I
but
like too how like they kind of like they show you like what's really happening, but it's like they kind of like there's just kind of like little clues along the way, and then at
mhm,
like the end you can kind of like put it all together and be like, but they're not overtly like this is what was going on. They kind of
yeah,
just kind of like breadcrumb it out. I like when movies do that, and they're not like, here, let me just like give you some exposition at the end where we can explain to you what was really happening, or like something like that. So
yeah, and I think what kind of separates it from like the other A24 horror movies, their elevated horror movies, more young and like kind of hip and cool, than um, while also dealing with a lot of the same themes than a lot of their other ones, which don't necessarily become box office hits like the way Talk to Me did. I
yeah,
mean,
it was kind of neat too. Like that's a good point of how it was like the young and cool kids. It was kind of neat too. Like there's this thing going on that's supernatural and typically scary, and then it's like, well, let me like put this on TikTok or whatever and
yeah,
give you. And it was just like like very like brought. It was very like horror, traditional horror, kind of like brought into today more so
mhm,
than you've seen a lot of movies do it, where they're just like, oh man, this would be a great TikTok video.
yeah. Yeah, like
um,
A24 did that to an extent with like bodies, 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 but like that was a way more comedic
mhm,
um story. And then this went
yeah,
full on supernatural and dark. Um, but they both did like a kind of like Gen Z horror movie, like for modern day. Um, and this one really did it in a dark and powerful way.
yeah. Now I'm excited to see what these directors have in store next, whether it's a Talk to Me sequel or if they're gonna do something completely
I
original.
mean, it was
Uh,
greenlit, so I'm expecting it to be their next film.
yeah, it'll definitely interested to see what they've got. I've kind of got that newcomer feel for horror that I haven't had since Jordan
Mm.
Peele started
So,
got on the scene.
yeah, no, they're exciting budding filmmakers, and yeah, it'll be funny to see Talk to Me with the number two, as the two, like it's fucking Too Fast, Too Furious or some shit. Um, but or no, I guess it'd be the most. It would be like Coming to America, having two instead of the number two instead of the word two. Um, I think that was the last one that did it. And the first one that I can remember doing it just like where it's the exact same title but with a number.
That makes it so
Assuming
confusing though.
assuming they actually do that. I mean, I know they did it in the initial like announcement, but maybe they'll change it when it actually comes
They
out. And
could make
yes,
it
it
like
makes it confusing. Believe me, one of my favorite movies of all time is Scream, and when then I have to talk about Scream 5, which is also called Scream.
yeah.
Um,
One thing I also wanted to, because I agree with everything both of you said. Feel the same way. The movie ended up probably being my number six. I really just shuffled around um, my movies to the point where it didn't make my list. Definitely one of my favorite movies of last year. Um, but it's cool to see creators, because these brothers, they weren't filmmakers beforehand. They were YouTube creators that were creating short films, have a following on YouTube, and had this idea for this movie and then created a film. It's cool to see like people from uh, that camp of creativity, uh, making waves and heading into like the mainstream and getting a hit like this, because this movie really didn't cost much to make, um, but it it just hit on so many different levels for a lot of different people that I think it's really cool to see you know new filmmakers come from a more non-traditional starting point,
Yeah. No, I completely agree. It's
and they're
pretty
young
cool.
too. So
yeah, always excited to see young new talent in the horror genre and beyond. But all right, Doug, that was your number two film. As previously mentioned, Corey and I both had Oppenheimer at number two, so we will move on to our number one picks, each of which were on two of our lists. So Corey's number one pick was my number three film. So Corey, talk about your number one, your favorite film of the year.
yeah, so I went with the holdovers. I've now Murph and I saw this at the film festival in a town near us last year, and I think I've watched it two more times since then. Um, Movie just it hit for me on so many different levels. Performances were fantastic. It's a great, uh, really period piece. It feels like a movie that took place in the 70s. Um, I think the best performance of the year by Paul Giamatti. Um, he has multiple multiple scenes in this movie that just like blew me away. And the supporting cast was fantastic. A lot of faces that I've never seen before. Dominic Sessa, which he's a student in the movie. I think this was his first movie.
Yeah, it was
Um,
fucking great breakout role for him.
yep, and him and Paul Giamatti more or less carry this movie. Their relationship is the core for this movie working. On
Yeah,
top
I'd
of
say so like a three-hander with the
yeah,
two of them and Divine Joy Randolph.
yep, and she, it's fantastic. I know she's been up for a lot of awards.
Fucking
Um,
steamrolling. She's like Robert Downey Jr., just winning every single one of them.
yep. Um, just Carrie Preston was another standout. And the movie just it has a lot of heart. It's everyone can really relate to the themes and the subject matter of the movie in a lot of different ways. Uh, and like I said, it's a movie that I've watched 3 times at this point. Great Christmas movie now to keep on
Oh
your
yeah,
list.
this is a holiday classic. Like
Yeah.
this is gonna be a staple moving forward.
Um, yeah, just I so many wonderful things about the movie. Really resonates with me. And I've never seen any of Alexander Payne's movies, um, other than I did see Sideways, but it's been a long time, and I didn't really like it at the time. But it's one I definitely want to return to now because I think I would like it now more as an adult um, than when I probably saw it when we were in high school. Yeah, I mean, amazing, amazing movie. What do you guys
Uh,
have to say about it? Anything?
yeah, no. Like I was alluding to earlier, I was between American Fiction and The Holdovers, between my 3 and 4 spot. Both dramedies, both very funny, but also dealing with serious subject matter at the same time, um, and both with probably my 2 favorite performances of the year, in with Paul Giamatti and Jeffrey Wright. So it really came down to, I think, I guess 2 things. Both the ending, I preferred the ending to The Holdovers, and well, I know I'm going to go back to both of these a lot because they were both laugh out loud hysterical. I think like The Holdovers I'm going to go to more because it's going to be like a holiday staple.
Mm-hmm.
Um, haven't had one of those like in a long time, but this feels like one of them where, like you said, I mean, I already went back and watched it like after in theaters, like around the holidays, once it came on Peacock, um, and I could just see myself watching it um, regularly, moving on, like down the road around that time of year.
And one other shout out to the music.
Yep.
The score was great. Adapted a lot of music from the time period, which worked really well. Um, and the editing and the way it was shot, it really did feel like a movie from the early 70s.
Yeah, I mean, just
Yeah,
from
that aesthetic.
they got that aesthetic going right with the marketing, with the trailers,
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
and it stayed throughout the entire film.
Yeah,
Um,
if you didn't know who the actors were,
yeah, you
and
could
know that
think,
it came out, you could definitely be tricked into thinking this was a movie that came out, decades ago.
yeah, you not a period piece, which I know Paul Giamatti is upset with by the fact that it's called a period piece, um, because it takes place in the '70s, and he was very much remembers the '70s, but it is a period piece.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Um,
This this was my number 6.
okay,
So it like just missed
just missed it.
being on my list and only recently got pushed down to be off the list. Um,
So
but
many good
yeah,
movies.
it's such a good movie. Completely agree with everything you guys said, and to me that's Paul Giamatti is I kind of agree. I guess it's we're kind of getting into our like Oscars talk a little bit, but
Yeah, a little bit.
I think he I think he's probably the best performance for me too.
Yeah, and Corey, you mentioned Alexander Payne's filmography. I've seen all of his movies. This is my favorite of all the work he's done. I do need to go back probably and watch Sideways again and About Schmidt again, as like now that I'm in my 30s versus watching it when I was probably in my early 20s.
Hmm.
Um,
Probably hit
Definitely, I
differently.
imagine they would hit differently, but a lot of them I've seen fairly recently. Like rewatched Election and saw a bunch of the other ones for the first time prior, like right around the time The Holdovers was coming out. But yeah, as of now, this is definitely my favorite from his filmography, like a 5-star film. So, all right, let's move on then to Doug's number 1 pick, which was Corey's number 3 pick, and very similarly, it was one that just missed my list. Um, so, Doug, talk about your number 1 pick, your favorite film of the year.
Yep, my number one pick is Killers of the Flower Moon, a movie that I saw very recently, like within the last couple of weeks, um, and one that I had put off watching because I was pretty convinced I was not going to like it. And obviously I was wrong, because very, very wrong, because it's my number one movie now of the year. Um, yeah, this movie just worked for me. I'm not sure if it's probably not my favorite. I don't know where it is on my Scorsese list. That'll be an interesting list to make. Um,
If we
It's
ever
up
did a
there.
Scorsese list, that would be it would be bonkers.
yeah, it's definitely up there.
A hard list put together.
It's
Yeah.
hard to say like where it would fall on my list, but to me this movie was perfect to me, which feels surprising to say at the runtime it's at. But
Yeah,
to me, it kind of,
I'm not a huge fan of like these super long movies. Like
I mean, a three and a
3.5
half hour
is
movie
like
is
it's
is kind of
abnormal.
crazy.
Very
Yeah,
long.
it's
Like
abnormally long.
there's only
Um,
so many like that length.
it didn't feel like a 3.5 hour movie though when I watched it, which I found very surprising. I watched this pretty late at night, and I expected to get tired about halfway through, and I was hooked. Um, the the way this movie was shot, I thought was awesome. Part of the long runtime is like it felt like Scorsese really gave scenes like time to breathe, and really just kind of like had these like long. He took long shots throughout the movie where there's not like any dialogue necessarily going on or anything like that, which I'm sure contributed to the 3.5 hour runtime. But to me, was completely necessary to kind of develop the atmosphere. The story I thought was great. Performance wise, I mean, I thought these. It's kind of crazy to me how people aren't talking so much about Robert De Niro, who I thought gave one of his best performances I've seen of him in a very long time.
I've been
In this
surprised about
movie,
that too.
I think people. I mean, he's nominated for Academy Award, but I do think people just take him for granted at
take it
this
for
point in his
granted.
career.
Yeah.
I mean, Leo gave a great performance too,
Yeah,
and
it's
no
like
one
people
talks about
take.
that either.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he wasn't even nominated, but he's another
yeah.
actor who
I think
people
this is
absolutely take for granted at this point.
one of his best performances. Even I would even put this over The Irishman, personally.
Yeah, I mean, De Niro, DiCaprio, those, and I guess Lily Gladstone is a lesser. It's hard to say it's a three-hander, because of the fact that, I mean,
She gets so
it's
much
even,
less screen time than them,
yeah, she's
even though
got,
she's the heart and soul of the movie.
Yep.
yeah, she's the protagonist almost in a way, or like,
The movie starts with her talking, and the movie
yeah,
ends talking about her. Um, like it's
the
her movie. That she's always a presence of the film, even when she's not in the film.
Yeah, that's a good point.
yeah, and the movie kind of felt a little bit like Goodfellas. Is that what the movie is? In that you're following these like antagonists basically, or like your main, like you're following the shitty people and
Yeah,
seeing all
like
the shitty things they do.
yeah, no, it's many Scorsese movies. You're following these
Yeah,
shitty.
for whatever reason, that Goodfellas is the one that this one reminded me the most of. But like set in like this Native American like older time period. But yeah, the performances were awesome. The way this movie ended, I thought was pretty incredible too.
I was going to
With
ask about your thought about the ending because we
I
haven't
loved
talked
it.
about that.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
loved it. It kind of
it,
like,
it hit hard.
what's funny is you kind of had a similar ending with Asteroid City in a way,
Yes, you are right.
where it's kind of like
I don't even like really remember how Asteroid City ended.
well, because Asteroid City, the whole point of it was like a
I was like, wait.
production.
I was like, wait. Did Wes Anderson walk out on screen? I don't remember that.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't think Wes Anderson necessarily walked out on screen, but it was like, here's the ending of the play, and you're kind of like zoomed back out to like a
Yeah,
play
because
or the
the way
performance.
that movie was framed.
Yeah, and so it was kind of
right.
funny that this movie kind of ended in a similar way, where it was like, this is a performance
Mm-hmm.
that you're seeing. But yeah, Scorsese just kind of coming out for like, kind of felt like a mic drop moment. Yeah, like coming
As
out and
Doug
just
said
kind of
it, I
ripping the
did the
end of the
mic drop
story.
moment or
That was
motion
perfect.
for anyone listening.
Good job, guys.
We were both on the same page
Well
there.
done. Well
Yeah,
done, both of you.
and I don't know. I just like to me, this movie's a masterpiece. I thought it was perfect. I have no critique about it. I just like don't give a lot of 10 out of 10s. To me, this was a 10 out of 10. Like, there's nothing I would change. I thought it was I thought it was great. The I loved it all the way through, and then that Scorsese ending was just kind of like the cherry on top, where I was like, "Yep, that was amazing." So yeah, didn't
Yeah, as you were going along with the movie, like I kept asking, like, so you still like, what are you thinking about it now? Like,
yeah,
because you watched it over like at night and then finished it the following morning. But you
yeah,
finished
only because it was
the
getting late.
majority of it at night.
Yeah,
Um,
only because it was getting late,
I
and
was like,
I
how's he gonna
wanted to.
feel about it by the end? Like, you still got like 40 minutes to go. Like, you
No,
were
it's kind of made
fucking
me
loving it
like,
at that point. Like, could it change
yeah,
tomorrow?
it's kind of made me like, and I hate this about what it's done, but I'm kind of like, man, I wish Oppenheimer wasn't getting so much of the buzz because I feel like Killers of the Flower Moon is just like forgotten about. But
Yeah, like we
um,
talked about in the chats, fucking this man puts out so many movies that get like 10 plus Oscar nominations, and so many of them end up winning like nothing.
Mhm.
Um, it's like it's crazy.
This is
this
one I
felt,
think. This is one I think that will also like have some legs as time goes on.
Yeah, I
I think
think
it'll
it
resonate.
will as well. I think it was a
yeah, I
tough
mean,
ask to have people sit in a theater for 3.5 hours to watch a brutal tale of a lot of indigenous people getting murdered,
Hmm.
um, and kind of being, some people probably feeling they were getting lectured to a degree or like preached to about how white people are bad and causing so much trouble. But I think when like now being accessible on Apple TV Plus, um, and people can watch it like at their own leisure, um, it's it'll be talked about more. A lot more people will see it.
And it plays very well in multiple viewing, like multiple sittings. Um, it's great watching it completely through. I mean, we saw it in theaters that way, but if you watch it in like in three sittings between each chapter ending, it works. It works really well. That's how I watched it the second time. So
Yeah, no,
I
even though it's telling an incredibly grim story, the movie's also entertaining and funny as fuck.
yes.
Like most of Scorsese's movies dealing with some dark subject matter, it has tons of funny stuff. Like going back to Goodfellas, Goodfellas is a hilarious film, um,
yeah,
and incredibly entertaining, despite the fact that it's dealing with gangsters stabbing, shooting people, fucking choking people, etc., etc. Um, I mean, this is definitely worse based
yeah,
on true events, and I mean, it's a horrific thing that happened in United States history, but he still manages to make it an entertaining film, despite it being 3.5 hours, which is a massive achievement.
Hmm.
yeah. I like too how Leo's character was kind of, he was like a horrible human being, but you were like, does he really love his wife?
Yeah,
You were kind of like, does he think he loves his wife? Like, what's going? Like, there's still like something about the character where you're like,
Something's off.
yeah, like, does he think
yeah,
he's doing
it
this
like
because he
goes
loves
in.
her?
It goes into like the anatomy of a fall conversation that we had earlier, like about whether you think like she did or didn't um, push her husband. Like, it, does he or does he not like really love his wife? Like, how much is he just like? I don't know. He's a very complex character.
Yeah, it's more
Um,
than just like he's a bad guy, and even like Robert De Niro's
he's a dumb
character,
guy.
he's a
Very,
very
very.
dumb guy.
He
Yes.
definitely does very bad things. Like
Oh
he's
yeah,
a
he's
bad guy and he's a
100%.
bad guy and a dumb guy, but
Manipulated
he's
easily.
also
Well,
has a lot of like he does have heart and like a human side to him as well.
Yeah, the other thing we didn't talk about either, and just a real quick final thing to say is like you had Brendan Fraser's like attorney character. That
What
was
did you
kind of
think?
funny.
What did you think of him? The internet hated him. What did you think of him?
That was kind of fun.
Okay, because he
really,
like
the internet hated him.
oh
Why?
yeah, he like yells all his dialogue.
But it was kind of
Um,
like the character was supposed to be
Yeah.
this like
the
He's supposed to be
stu-
this shady
the
lawyer.
stupid boy line really took on a life of its own online.
I liked it, and then Jesse Plemons, I liked his character too. It's
Yeah,
like
he's
the
Yeah, I like Jesse
federal
Plemons
agent.
when he pops
So-
up. That's when you first texted. You're like, "Oh, Jesse Plemons popped up. I think I'm going to stop watching it now." And then you're like, "I continued watching it, and I'm still loving it."
Mm.
And then
Yeah.
I don't think we mentioned enough about Lily Gladstone. Well,
Yeah,
I guess
she
we did.
was
She was just incredible.
she was great. Yeah, she did a great job.
First
Mhm.
film I've ever seen her in, and just phenomenal. Every time I hear her speak, like outside of the movie as well, just she comes off so eloquent, and I am very excited to see what opportunities she gets moving forward after all the accolades and recognition she's gotten
Mhm.
over the past 6 months from Killers, or I guess since Cannes last summer, when it first premiered.
So many scenes that she was in where she was conveying all this emotion without even saying anything. Just her face is just well done. Very well done.
Yeah, it wasn't a like a showy performance, and
Mhm.
yet it had left an incredible impact on probably everyone who's seen the film.
Mhm.
So that's fucking like that's incredible. Best, in my opinion, best performance in the film. Which is crazy when you're competing with Robert De Niro and DiCaprio, both working with Scorsese, which is when they're like kind of at the top of their game,
Mhm.
especially
And they
especially
were
with
at their top
De
of their
Niro.
game. Like
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah, bravo.
Scorsese Western. Crazy.
Yep,
More
finally
or
got it.
less.
It still had the gangster elements. So yeah. All right. Now we'll get to my number one film, which was Doug's number four film. Had you told me at the beginning of the year that Doug would have Killers of the Flower Moon as his number one movie, and I would have Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse as my number one movie, wouldn't have believed it.
yeah,
No
something's definitely
fucking way.
like wrong here.
I
I'm
believe the year started with Killers of the Flower Moon being my number one most anticipated movie, and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse being your number one anticipated
Probably.
movie. I'm the Scorsese like fanboy, like by like the most of this group, and you are the Into the Spider-Verse fanboy, the most of this group. But yeah, Spider-Man Across Spider-Verse was my number one. I just don't think there was anything as impressive from top to bottom. Like it was just like visually, it was absolutely stunning. The storytelling was incredibly emotional and impactful. All the character work, the various voice actors. Yeah, they're not on screen, but like you felt their performances. It's another one. We didn't touch on this earlier when we were talking about part ones and part twos, but this was a very much a part one of a two-part story, and yet it felt while it ended on a cliffhanger, it did feel like a complete story. So when that to be continued hits, it's more like Back to the Future part two when like the to be continued hits. Like I feel like it's gonna part three or Beyond the Spider Verse, whenever the fuck it comes out, is going to tell its own story, while also continuing, obviously, what was going on, largely in Beyond the Spider Verse, along with continuing the story from the start of the trilogy. Um, but yeah, I mean, I saw this one twice in theaters. Absolutely could have saw it another time. Watched it again since on, I guess, on 4K since it came out, and it just like packs a wallop every single time. I'm fucking beyond entertained throughout. I know, Doug, you prefer Into the Spider Verse. I definitely prefer Across the Spider Verse. While I love Into the Spider Verse and you love Across the Spider Verse, um, I found this one to, I guess, have more substance, just while still retaining all of its comedic sensibilities that the first one had, and
It's more
strong
mature.
storytelling. It's more mature. It's a darker sequel. It does the typical trilogy. Middle chapter is darker, and ends with it's like The Empire Strikes Back, or like it's that type of sequel. Um, Leaves your heroes in precarious situations, not all together, but some of them reuniting. Spoiler alert. I don't know. You should have saw the movie by now. It's fucking February. It came out in June. Um,
Yeah.
but I can't wait for Beyond the Spider Verse. Like I said, we have no idea when it's actually going to come out. I guess,
2030.
yeah, I don't know. My guess is like 2026. But who knows? It was originally announced for this year.
Just like
I think it was announced for this March.
I
When we saw the film, we were just like, the third one is not coming out in March. There's no way in hell that is
Well,
happening.
especially when they were like, yeah, we've recorded nothing and
Yeah,
we've done
like
nothing.
no
we're still-
voiceover.
We're still working on Beyond this, but we're still working on Across the Spider Verse now, and the movie's already
Yeah,
out in
they were
theaters.
still changing it when it was in theaters.
Yeah.
They were still working on it.
So I think we got a long way to go, but I don't care how long we have to wait. I just as long as they stick the landing, I think it could be the best comic book trilogy of all time, which I never would have thought would have happened when the first one came out. So, Doug, you had on
Yeah.
your list, so why don't you talk about it next?
Yeah, I mean, you're right in that I really, really like this movie. Obviously, it's high on my list. It didn't hit quite as strong for me as the first one, but I think just kind of the first one's story maybe resonated a little bit more for me. And I kind of liked the lightheartedness of the first one. But the second one's really, really good. I mean, it's got one of the most visually stunning scenes to I've seen animated with the watercolor world that they decided to go with.
Oh, yeah. For Gwen.
For Gwen's world was just gorgeous, and then that whole fight scene that they have with her and the vulture. He's like the Italian Renaissance. Like
really kicks off the movie.
Yeah, and that's just that. I thought that scene was pretty incredible. I think the story they definitely went. It definitely kind of felt like a Dark Knight or Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah,
entry
I was
into-
I was thinking Dark Knight also when I said Empire Strikes Back. So
Yeah.
thanks for throwing it out there.
Yeah, it seems like that type of movie, and it was really good. I saw it twice in theaters. I don't make it out to the theater as much as you guys do, and so to see a movie twice, like back to back, like I did, really says a lot about the movie. So I had a really great time with it. I think the villain that they set up was really interesting. We didn't get to see that play out.
I've loved Jason Schwartzman as the Spot.
Yeah, Jason Schwartzman as the Spot. I really liked how they kind of developed that character from kind of a joke to a real big bad. By the time you get to
like
the end of that movie,
a terrifying villain by the end.
It was it was a really well done movie. It was kind of what was interesting is Into the Spider-Verse like really kind of changed the animation style and kind of was like a trendsetter. And then this movie somehow found a way to like one up itself, which didn't really like seem possible.
Yeah, I think like the only downside is because it was such a difficult movie to make is we didn't get this one in 3D. Because can you even imagine how amazing this movie would have looked in 3D? Like, it
I
would
mean,
have
I
been
didn't get to see
incredible.
the first one in 3D, so
I Yeah, I know you didn't, but hopefully they re-release the
Oh, would have
first one
been
in 3D
insane.
at some point. But it would have been fucking insane.
yeah. Maybe they will
Because
at some point
yeah,
re-release it.
it's totally possible. Fuck it, they might be working on the 3D version of this one now instead of working on the third movie. Who knows?
I don't want
Very
that.
possible.
But yeah, it was.
But I mean, there were strikes. There were times where they could have been like conceivably been doing that.
Yep.
Because they couldn't write
Well,
and they couldn't do dialogue, they couldn't act, so or do voiceover during a very long stretch of time this year. Um, but yeah, I what were you gonna say? And then we'll circle back to me.
the only other thing I was gonna say is I thought the score, like when I talked about how they one up the animation, I also want to mention the fact that I thought they one up the score.
Hmm.
I thought the score was definitely better in this movie. Like they definitely kind of
Score,
took the themes
yeah,
and then they kind of made it into like a real big movie score that the first one didn't necessarily have.
yeah. I think the score was better in the first one or in the second one, and the first one had better needle drops that
Yeah,
like the What Up Danger and Sunflower. Um, but yeah, this one had that epic score that the first one didn't have. Um, and yeah, like the first one, obviously was like very much Miles' story, and with Peter B. Parker kind of playing like the main supporting character, despite Gwen Stacy being in the movie Spider Gwen. This one was kind of a dual protagonist film where Gwen gets to be in the spotlight kind of to an equal degree as Miles. Um, and I thought Haley Steinfeld and just the writing for her character was, and just the world that she lived in, that watercolor world, um, was all incredible to witness. But yeah, Oscar Isaac killed it. Daniel Kaluuya among the new cast, Shea Wiggum, um, Jason Schwartzman, like mentioned, and then like and everyone that came back: Brian Tyree Henry, Mahershala Ali, Shamik Moore, Lauren Velez. I thought they did better work with the parents in this one than the first movie. Miles's relationship with both of them versus really just kind of dealing with his dad in the first one, but it was even more so dealing with his uncle than dealing
yeah,
with his parents. Um, and then Jake Johnson, obviously, last once he returns, it's like, oh man, you got a smile on your face, like with Peter B. Parker being back. Um, can't wait for them all teaming up in the next one.
yeah. That's I guess that was kind of the part that I kind of like felt like I
You
missed
you
out
you
on
wanted more
was
Peter B. Yeah,
and just like the team back together again. But
yeah.
I understand why they wanted to save it for the last movie. So
Now you're gonna go fucking crazy when it's actually happening in the third one. Um, it's
yep, bring them all
making
back.
Yeah, making you wait for it, but it's going to be incredibly rewarding once it happens. Um,
Yeah, for
Once it
sure.
happens.
yeah. Corey, anything you would like to add about Spider Verse?
Uh no, I think you guys hit on everything. It definitely a very strong movie. Not I probably would put this in my probably top 15 of last year, but not my top 5. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think I like this one more than the first one, even though the first one is also absolutely fantastic. I do think you're right, Murph. The trajectory is definitely best superhero Marvel trilogy. I think it's very possible for that to
Yeah.
happen.
All right.
Think
Just to recap, then, for Corey's top five, he had number five, The Zone of Interest; number four, Anatomy of a Fall; number three, Killers of the Flower Moon; number two, Oppenheimer; and number one, The Holdovers. Doug had Saltburn at number 5, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse at number 4, Oppenheimer at number 3, Talk to Me at number 2, and Killers of the Flower Moon at number 1. And for myself, I had Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning at number 5, American Fiction at number 4, The Holdovers at number 3, Oppenheimer at number 2, and Across the Spider-Verse at number 1. If you have any questions about where you can find these films, but feel free to comment on our YouTube video or whatever. Most of them are available to stream. Some are still only in theaters, but or you could probably, at the very worst case scenario, purchase it at home. But that's all we've got for today regarding our main topic. Thank you again for listening. Please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and X. Subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all that jazz. But before we leave, we're going to quickly go over our winter spring box office pool and where things lie before Dune Part 2 opens this coming weekend and fucking destroys everything. Yeah, we'll see. Things are looking pretty good right now, Doug, for its opening weekend. But right now, I'm in number one. Probably gonna be my first and only weekend this season, being in that number one spot. So I've had Argyle, Lisa Frankenstein, Bob Marley, One Love, and Ordinary Angels. It's been very much Bob Marley, One Love that's been doing its thing for me. It's at 71 million after its second weekend. Everything else is kind of disappointed. Ordinary Angels has now disappointed me 2 seasons in a row. When I drafted it, it didn't come out, and then when I drafted it in, it underperformed. I do not understand faith-based audiences, and I will not draft any of your movies ever again, unless Jesus is in the title. Then Argyle, just fucking major disappointment for me, and Lisa Frankenstein hasn't done much of anything. So I got 129 million. Doug's got 109 million with Mean Girls, Miller's Girl, Madam Web, and Drive-Away Dolls. You've gone big on the females for your movies. Now that I think about it,
I didn't even remember that I took Drive-Away Dolls.
Yeah, it was one of your last picks. I think
surprised that it was on there.
I think you took it after I took Lisa Frankenstein, and they both did bad, but Lisa Frankenstein did just a little bit better. But Drive-Away Dolls are like a 2 million opening this weekekend.
2.5.
And what was Miller's Girl? Under $1 million?
Under 5.
It was like $1,000, like $10.
One person thought
like $300,000. And it's been criticized heavily online for the Martin Freeman Jenna Ortega relationship in the film. So
just like too much of an age difference.
Yeah, there's been controversy about the subject matter. And I think the intimacy coordinator like revealing information that she wasn't supposed to, or he wasn't supposed to after the film. So it's been dealing with a bunch of shit. But Madam Web kind of dealing with the whole, is it superhero fatigue, or is it just we don't want to see shitty movies in the superhero genre? Granted, it's got 35 million. I didn't think it was like an abomination to cinema, but it actually like had a decent hold in second weekend of only dropping 60%. You would think, based on being a holiday weekend and it having only like a 12% on Rotten Tomatoes, that it would have been like one of those 70 to 80% drops, but only 60% drop. So I don't know. You could probably credit that to Sydney Sweeney.
That's a good point.
And holdover success from Anyone But You, which is still killing it. Well, not killing it, but well per weekend. But yeah, Doug, you've got Dune Part 2 coming up this weekend, and that's going to change things significantly for you. You don't seem too like hyped up, like enthusiastic like I am on what it's going to do. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm a little. It's still like a sci-fi.
We have it on the record.
Yeah, it's still a Part 2 sci-fi movie. I don't think it's going to be Like I think it's gonna do well, but I don't think it's gonna like do. I'm a little worried, to be honest, about this Kung Fu Panda that Corey's got, and that's gonna outperform Dune Part Two.
I think you're on drugs. We need to get you drug tested, stat, for
Do I
Livery
agree?
Film.
Even though I'm shaking
Um,
my head, yes, no, I do not agree. Doug is crazy, but yes, I hope it happens.
I do think Kung Fu Panda is going to be very big because there's nothing for kids
Yeah.
right now. Like Migration's still in the top 5, and that movie came out over Christmas.
Yeah.
So I think Kung Fu Panda will fit a market and be bigger than I would have expected when we drafted it. But no, Dune Part 2 is going to be bigger.
See,
I wouldn't be remotely surprised if it has a $100 million opening weekend. Right now, I would say I'm going to go with the 90 million to 100 million weekend, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's over 100.
Yeah, I think it's going to be over.
They're saying 80 right now, and
so it's gone up because it was
Warner
70
Brothers.
yet.
Warner Brothers is saying like 65. Like they're being
That's
like
conservative.
they're being very conservative, but like tracking is like at like that 80 point. I think it's going to be a 90 to potentially over 100 million. I mean, it's got like a 98 on Rotten Tomatoes. Like the hype just seems there. The cast is everywhere. I don't know if you're just being like just wanting to temper your own expectations by saying bananas things like Kung Fu Panda is going to make more money. But I mean, you have valid points in the fact that it's sci-fi based on like it, and it's had a first one a day and date release and all that jazz. But this one has a lot more going for it than the first one did.
Yeah, but part of me feels like you're putting your excitement too much in. I don't know.
It could be. You could be.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
I'll be happy if it's $100 million opening. It just
You could top all your combined movies potentially this weekend. Like you have 109 million. I guess there's a world where I could see a top 109 million if the buzz just flows through this week, through the weekend.
If the buzz flows like the spice.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And speaking of buzz, let's talk about Corey and the Beekeeper, which is still his only movie to make any money. 65 million. Soul and Turning Red, they've got their like 3 million combined, $2 million combined, to 3 million combined. But it's really been the Beekeeper. But Corey's got Kung Fu Panda soon. I fully expect by like you to be a race between you two because I mean, Doug, you've got Dune Part 2 and Ghostbusters, and then Corey's got Kung Fu Panda, and Challengers, and I do see Abigail and the Ministry of Gentlemanly Warfare both being hits, at least modest hits. While we know what Luke is going to make, but I don't know what Imaginary and Love Lies Bleeding is going to do. My expectations is Love Lies Bleeding isn't going to do much. Yeah. Imaginary can do well just because it's a horror movie. And I just don't see myself like performing with Arthur the King, Godzilla and Kong, The First Omen, and Civil War. I think I needed at least 2 big hits, and I don't even know if we're going to get a hit out of Godzilla X Kong, just because I think people might be tired of that universe by now.
The trailer is just not good either.
And it's following Godzilla -1, which is fucking awesome. Like,
yeah, that's a good point.
The quality like is going to go down so much. So yeah, this was the storm. This was the calm before the Dune Part 2 storm. We'll be able to talk about how it opened next week, since we will be doing our Oscar episode next week. Anything else you guys want to add about the box office before we wrap up?
No.
Nope.
All right.
Good job with Marley, who continues to dominate the box office.
I had a feeling that movie was going to be, pretty big.
Yeah, no, I hope we can somehow leg it out to close to 100 million. Be some counter programming this weekend and just continue to somehow make it to 100 million because I need to make up for Argyle, which is only at like 40 million. So yeah. As always, this has been Corey, Doug, and Murph at Live Breathe Film. We'll see you again next time for our 100th episode, film fans.
Yeah.